Today, chaos is descending on Whitehall as angry farmers unite in a tractor-only protest against what they're calling a devastating betrayal of British farming. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is under fire for failing to address reforms to agricultural property relief, APR, for inheritance tax, reforms that could force 75% of family farms to sell off land just to pay their tax bills. The tension is palpable, and GB News is right at the heart of the action. Now, you're about to hear directly from the farmers themselves, raw, unfiltered, and furious. Watch as they share their outrage and fears for the future.
These people work so hard to keep food on our table, and Starmer is stabbing them in the back. He's stabbed the pensioners in the back, he's stabbing veterans in the back, and now he's turned on the farmers, and it's wrong. He should stop, John.
How do you feel about the inheritance tax and the wider budget?
I just think it's disgraceful, to be honest. I think farmers work tirelessly, day in, day out, in any weather condition. They have, farming can't stop. And I think to tax an industry that, is rich in assets but poor in cash, and they can't pay that inheritance tax, I just think it's totally unfair when everything they work for could be sold because they can't afford to keep it due to the inheritance tax.
What's happening is absolutely atrocious. The way that they're going to take some 500 odd million off farmers in this tax and then send over 500 million abroad to farmers, it's just an absolute joke. I just wish they'd rather look after our own people first. And, let's put our... The best thing is that during the war, farmers weren't allowed to go and fight. Yet now we're just rubbishing farmers' industry with no concern of what is going to happen. So it's an absolute disgrace. So I'm here showing my support for these lads and girls. If you notice, most of them are all in the work gear. They've come here today to try and persuade the government to change their mind. They're in wellies that are covered in dirt. They're in overalls. It's an absolute disgrace. So I'm just here showing my support.
Across the nation, an extraordinary sight unfolds as farmers from Exmoor, Shropshire, Somerset and beyond descend on the capital. Tractors dominate the streets, causing massive traffic disruptions, while similar scenes unfold in Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast. The protests, dubbed RIP British Farming, aim to send a loud and clear message to Downing Street. These policies will devastate not just farmers, but the very fabric of rural Britain. At the heart of the unrest is a proposed cap on agricultural property relief, which would limit tax-free inheritance to £1 million of combined agricultural and business property. Above that threshold, families would face a 20% inheritance tax compared to the current 0%. Farmers argue that soaring land values mean most farms will easily breach the cap, leaving families with impossible choices: sell off land, take on enormous debt, or shut down entirely. GB News captured the raw frustration in Melton Mowbray, where Will Hollis spoke to protesters. One farmer, his voice shaking with emotion, said, "This isn't just about numbers on a page. This is our history, our livelihoods, and our future being torn apart. They're not just taxing our land, they're taxing our legacy." Another added, "We can't survive this. The land pays for itself through farming, but we don't have liquid cash lying around to pay these taxes. They might as well ask us to sell our souls." The anger isn't confined to the farming community. Public support for the protests has surged on social media, with the hashtag #SaveBritishFarming trending across platforms. Many see the issue as emblematic of a government out of touch with rural Britain. Critics argue that this policy disproportionately targets farmers while protecting the wealth of urban elites. High-profile figures have joined the outcry. Composer Andrew Lloyd Webber and TV personality Jeremy Clarkson, himself a farmer, attended a previous protest in solidarity. Clarkson didn't mince words, stating, "This is idiotic. Farming isn't just a job, it's a way of life. If you destroy farms, you destroy communities. Simple as that." Nigel Farage, another outspoken supporter, blasted the government, calling the reforms an unforgivable assault on rural Britain. He urged the Prime Minister to reconsider before irreparable damage is done, but the government remains unmoved. Despite mounting pressure, Labour MPs recently blocked a Tory motion to reverse the changes. Keir Starmer held a high-profile meeting with NFU chief Tom Bradshaw, calling it a grown-up conversation. However, the farming community sees little concrete action from either side. The stakes couldn't be higher. The NFU estimates that 75% of family farms will exceed the £1 million threshold, putting their futures at risk. One farmer summed it up grimly: "We're not just protesting for ourselves, we're fighting for the next generation. If these policies go through, there won't be a next generation of British farmers." As tractors roll through city centres and rural communities rally in support, the government faces growing calls to act. Meanwhile, tensions are escalating on another front. Labour's Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is bracing for a clash with trade unions over a proposed 2.8% public sector pay rise, a figure union leaders have lambasted as insulting. Unison's head of health, Helga Pyle, didn't hold back. This offer doesn't reflect the dedication NHS workers have shown through the pandemic. It's barely above inflation, and it's a slap in the face to the people who've kept this country afloat. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham added fuel to the fire, accusing the government of perpetuating a recruitment and retention crisis. "You can't fix the NHS without fixing pay. This isn't just about fairness, it's about survival. Without a serious pay correction, the NHS will collapse." Education unions are also sounding the alarm. The National Education Union warned that the unfunded pay increases would deepen existing crises in schools. General Secretary Daniel Kebede said, "Teachers are already stretched beyond their limits. This so-called pay rise doesn't even begin to address the real issues: staff shortages, burnout, and years of below-inflation pay increases." As the public sector faces its own battles, a new political player is seizing the moment. Reform UK, led by Richard Tice, is gaining traction amid growing dissatisfaction with the Conservatives. Tice made headlines by publicly inviting Jacob Rees-Mogg to join the party during a fiery exchange on GB News. "Jacob, you're a real Conservative," Tice declared. "The Conservative Party has abandoned its values. Reform UK is the only party fighting for what you and millions of others believe in." While Rees-Mogg defended his loyalty to the Tories, he acknowledged Reform UK's growing influence. "Competition keeps us honest. Reform has a role to play in ensuring the Conservative Party remains true to its principles. Reform UK is on the rise. With billionaire Nick Candy as its new treasurer and a membership surpassing 100,000, the party is positioning itself as a serious contender for the next general election. Their focus? Professionalising operations and capitalising on the widespread disillusionment with mainstream politics. Back on the streets of Whitehall, the farmers' protests show no signs of abating. As tractors form an unyielding line outside Parliament, their message is clear: they won't back down until this policy is scrapped. Whether the government will listen remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: this is a fight that could shape the future of Britain's countryside. What do you think? Should the government reverse these inheritance tax reforms to save British farming? Are public sector workers being shortchanged? And is Reform UK the solution to the political discontent sweeping the nation? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more explosive updates on these developing stories.